Private tarmac at JFK Airport, a $70 million Gulfstream G50 gleaming in the morning sun. Isabella Rodriguez Sterling, 6 months pregnant and radiant in Chanel, had planned the perfect surprise for her billionaire husband Alexander, a romantic early arrival for their Monaco trip. But when she boarded their private jet, expecting to find Alexander reviewing business documents, she discovered something that would shatter her world forever. Voices, intimate laughter, and then the devastating sight through the cabin door, her husband of 5 years locked in passionate embrace with Vivian Blackwood, his stunning communications consultant. But it wasn't just the affair that destroyed Isabella, as she recorded everything on her phone, trembling behind the bedroom door. She heard Alexander's cold, calculated words. God, I can't wait until this pregnancy is over, and I can finally get rid of her. She was fine when I needed someone respectable, but she's too principled for what comes next. Her fairy tale marriage wasn't just ending, it had been a lie from the very beginning. Like if you believe justice always finds a way, subscribe for more incredible stories of betrayal and ultimate triumph. This is how a victim became a CEO. The morning sun cast long shadows across the private tarmac at JFK Airport, where a sleek Gulfstream G650 worth $70 million sat gleaming like a metallic beast ready to devour the sky. Isabella Rodriguez Sterling adjusted her Hermes handbag over her shoulder, her 6-month pregnant belly creating a gentle curve beneath her cream-colored Chanel dress. At 28, she had the kind of effortless elegance that money couldn't buy, but could certainly enhance. She was early deliberately so. The Monaco Charity Gala wasn't until tomorrow evening, but Isabella had planned this surprise for weeks. Hidden in her purse was a Patek Philippe watch, a limited edition piece worth more than most people's homes, carefully selected for Alexander's 43rd birthday next week. She imagined his face lighting up with that rare, genuine smile she'd fallen in love with 5 years ago at a Columbia Law School fundraiser. The marriage had seemed like a fairy tale. Alexander Sterling, heir to a $15 billion real estate empire, CEO of Sterling Enterprises, and consistently ranked among Forbes' most powerful men under 50. Their wedding at the Plaza had been the social event of the year, with 500 guests including senators, celebrities, and foreign dignitaries. The penthouse overlooking Central Park, the house in the Hamptons, the ski lodge in Aspen. It was everything a girl from a working-class Mexican immigrant family could never have dreamed of. But lately, something had felt off. Alexander had become distant, cold. Their conversations revolved around charity events and business obligations, rather than the intimate talks they used to share about their future children, their dreams, their hopes. When Isabella announced her pregnancy 6 months ago, his reaction had been measured, professional, like he was approving a merger rather than celebrating the creation of their first child. "Mrs. Sterling," called James, the pilot, as he descended from the cockpit. "We weren't expecting you for another 2 hours." Isabella smiled warmly. James had been with the Sterling family for 8 years, had flown her and Alexander to dozens of destinations around the world. "I wanted to surprise my husband. Is he already aboard?" Something flickered across James's weathered face. Was it discomfort, embarrassment? "Yes, ma'am. He's in the main cabin with Ms. Blackwood. They're reviewing presentation materials for the Monaco event." Vivian Blackwood. Isabella's jaw tightened slightly. The 26-year-old former British model who had somehow maneuvered herself into the position of communications consultant for Sterling Enterprises 6 months ago. Coincidentally, right around the time Alexander had started working late and taking more business trips. "Of course they are," Isabella murmured, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. The baby kicked as if sensing her tension. "I'll just head aboard quietly. Don't want to disturb their work." Isabella climbed the aircraft's stairs, her designer heels clicking softly against the metal steps. The Gulfstream's interior was a masterpiece of luxury hand-stitched leather seats, mahogany tables, a fully equipped bar, and in the rear section, a private bedroom with a king-size bed that she and Alexander had christened on their honeymoon flight to the Maldives. As she stepped into the aircraft, she could hear voices coming from the main cabin. Laughter. Intimate, low laughter that made her stomach clench with an emotion she didn't want to name. Instead of announcing her presence, something made Isabella pause. Call it intuition. Call it fear. Call it the instinct of a woman who had spent months feeling like a stranger in her own marriage. She moved quietly toward the rear of the plane, where she could approach the main cabin from the back entrance near the bedroom. The voices became clearer as she approached. "God, I've missed this," came Vivian's breathy British accent. "These stuffy charity events are such a bore, but at least we get these private moments." Alexander's deep laugh, the one Isabella hadn't heard directed at her in months, rumbled through the cabin. "Monaco will be different. We won't have to pretend as much. Isabella will be too tired from the pregnancy to pay attention to what we're doing." Isabella's blood ran cold, her hand trembling. She pulled out her phone and activated the video recording function. Something told her she would need evidence of whatever she was about to witness. Moving like a shadow, she positioned herself where she could see through the slightly open door to the main cabin. What she saw made her knees nearly buckle. Alexander, her husband, the father of her unborn child, was locked in a passionate embrace with Vivian Blackwood. The blonde was perched on his lap in one of the leather captain's chairs, her fingers tangled in his dark hair, her red lips pressed against his neck. His hands were roaming her body with a familiarity that spoke of months, not moments, of intimacy. Isabella bit down hard on her lip to keep from crying out, forcing herself to keep recording. The phone captured everything: the way Alexander's eyes closed in pleasure, the way Vivian whispered things in his ear that made him groan with desire, the way they moved together like dancers who had rehearsed this choreography many times before. But it was what happened next that truly shattered Isabella's world. As they broke apart, breathless and flushed, Vivian stood and began unbuttoning her silk blouse. "Come on, darling," she purred. "We have 2 hours before your wife shows up. Let's make the most of it." Alexander stood, his tie already loosened, his shirt half unbuttoned. "God, I can't wait until this pregnancy is over and I can finally get rid of her." Isabella's hand flew to her mouth, but she forced herself to keep recording. "What's the plan again?" Vivian asked as she let her blouse fall to the floor, revealing black lace lingerie that Isabella recognized she had seen the charge on their joint credit card statement last month. "I'm getting tired of this secrecy." Alexander moved toward the bedroom, pulling Vivian with him. Isabella followed at a distance, her heart hammering so loud she was sure they would hear it. "Simple," Alexander said as they entered the bedroom, the same bedroom where Isabella had shared what she thought were loving moments with her husband. "She gives birth. I wait a decent interval. Then I file for divorce. The prenup limits her to $50 million, which is pocket change compared to what I'm worth now. She'll take it and disappear, grateful to get anything." Vivian laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. "And then what, you make me the new Mrs. Sterling. Among other things." Alexander's voice took on a calculating tone that Isabella had never heard before. "You'll be the perfect wife for where I want to take Sterling Enterprises. Young, beautiful, connected to European money." Isabella was fine when I needed someone respectable for the social pages, but she's too principled for what comes next. "What about the baby? What about it? I need an heir. The kid will have nannies, boarding schools. I'll see him on holidays and special occasions. That's how my father raised me, and I turned out fine." Isabella felt bile rise in her throat. She was watching her husband, the man she had loved, trusted, planned a future with, discuss their unborn child like a business asset and her like a broodmare who had outlived her usefulness. But she kept recording. Some instinct, perhaps the lawyer she had once been before she gave up her career to be Alexander's wife, told her this evidence would be crucial. They moved to the bed, her bed. Their bed, and Isabella forced herself to capture several more minutes of their betrayal. Not just the physical infidelity, but the coldly calculated conversation about their future, about how they had been planning this for months, about how Vivian would gradually take over Isabella's role in Sterling Foundation, Sterling Enterprises, and Sterling's life. "I still can't believe she hasn't figured it out," Vivian said as she straddled Alexander on the bed. "The woman supposedly used to be a lawyer. She's been soft ever since we got married," Alexander replied, his hands roaming Vivian's body. "Too comfortable, too trusting. She actually thinks I work late every night because I'm dedicated to the business. She has no idea I've been with you almost every evening for the past 4 months. What about when she finds out about the offshore accounts? When she realizes you've been moving money to the Caymans?" Alexander's laugh was cold, calculating. "By the time she finds out, it'll be too late. The prenup is ironclad. She'll get her 50 million and be grateful for it. The rest, the houses, the companies, the investments will be ours." Isabella had heard enough. Moving with the same careful silence, she backed away from the bedroom and made her way to the aircraft's exit. James was standing near the stairs, checking something on his tablet. "Mrs. Sterling, is everything all right?" "You look pale," Isabella forced a smile, though she could feel tears threatening to spill. "I'm fine, James. Just, just morning sickness. I think I'll head home and rest. Please tell Mr. Sterling I'll meet him at the charity event tomorrow night." James nodded, though his expression suggested he suspected something was wrong. "Of course, ma'am. Shall I call for your car?" "No, thank you. I'll take a taxi." As Isabella descended the stairs on shaking legs, she could still hear the sounds of passion coming from the aircraft. The man she had loved for 5 years, the father of her unborn child, was making love to another woman 30 feet above her head, planning to discard her like yesterday's newspaper. The taxi ride back to Manhattan passed in a blur. Isabella sat in the back seat, her hand protectively over her belly, watching the familiar skyline approach. The city that had once seemed like a promise of everything wonderful life could offer now felt like a gilded cage. Their penthouse, their $50 million penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, felt like a museum of lies when she walked through the door. Every piece of furniture, every work of art, every photograph of their supposedly happy marriage now seemed like evidence of an elaborate deception. Isabella walked to the master bedroom and sat heavily on the bed, the same bed where Alexander had held her when she told him about the pregnancy, where he had kissed her belly and whispered promises about their future as a family. How much of it had been an act? How long had he been planning to replace her with Vivian? She looked at her phone, at the devastating video she had recorded. 23 minutes of evidence that would change everything. 23 minutes that proved her husband didn't just not love her, he actively despised her, saw her as an obstacle to be removed once she had served her biological purpose. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing her distress. Isabella placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "I'm sorry, little one. I'm so sorry you're being born into this mess. But I promise you, something your father will never treat you the way he's treating me. I won't let him." Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "Slight delay with Monaco planning. We'll be home late. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you." The words that had once made her heart flutter now felt like acid on her soul. Isabella stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Of course, darling. Take all the time you need. I'll be here waiting." But as she sent the message, Isabella's expression hardened with a resolve that would have surprised anyone who knew her as the soft-spoken, accommodating Mrs. Sterling. She wasn't going to wait. She wasn't going to be discarded like a used tissue. And she certainly wasn't going to let Alexander Sterling destroy their child's future for the sake of his shallow, calculating mistress. The game was about to change, and Isabella was about to show her husband exactly how much he had underestimated the woman he married. The war was just beginning. Isabella spent the rest of that devastating afternoon in what she would later call her awakening. The woman who had walked onto that private jet was gone, replaced by someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. The lawyer she had been before marriage, the woman who had graduated summa cum laude from Columbia and had been courted by every top firm in Manhattan, was rising from the ashes of the naive wife she had become. By evening, she had made 3 crucial phone calls. The first was to Marcus Chen, her closest friend from law school and now CEO of Chen Media Group, Sterling Enterprises' biggest competitor in the media acquisition space. Marcus had been the one person who had questioned her decision to give up law for marriage. The one who had warned her that men like Alexander Sterling didn't marry for love, they married for strategy. Isabella, Marcus's concerned voice came through the phone at 11 p.m. "What's wrong, you sound?" "Broken," Isabella supplied, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse, looking out at the city lights that suddenly seemed cold and distant. "That's because I am Marcus. I need help." "Tell me." So she did. She told him about the video, about the conversation, about the months of lies and the calculated cruelty of Alexander's plan. When she finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Jesus, Isabella, I'm coming over." "No, Alexander will be home soon, and I can't let him suspect anything yet. But Marcus, I need to know if you still have connections at Morrison and Associates, specifically Elena Vasquez." Marcus let out a low whistle. Elena Vasquez was legendary in Manhattan legal circles, the divorce attorney who had taken down 3 billionaires in a Fortune 500 CEO in cases that had redefined how marital assets were divided in New York. She was expensive, ruthless, and had never lost a case involving infidelity and hidden assets. "Isabella, Elena doesn't just take cases, she takes wars. Are you sure you're ready for what this means?" Isabella's hand moved to her belly, where her son she had learned the gender just last week was growing. "My child deserves better than to be raised by a man who sees him as nothing more than an heir to manipulate." "Yes, I'm ready." The second call was to Elena Vasquez herself. Getting through to the legendary attorney at midnight should have been impossible, but Marcus had provided her direct number along with the code phrase that identified Isabella as a referral from his network. "Ms. Rodriguez Sterling," Elena's crisp voice came through the phone. Even at midnight, she sounded alert and professional. "Marcus Chen called ahead. He tells me you have a situation involving infidelity and asset concealment." "I have a video," Isabella said simply. 23 minutes of my husband planning our divorce with his mistress while they're in bed together, on our private jet. I also have evidence of him moving money to offshore accounts." There was a pause. "Can you be in my office at 6 a.m.? "Yeah. Bring the video. Bring any financial documents you have access to. And Ms. Rodriguez Sterling, don't let your husband know you've discovered anything. Not yet. We need time to build our strategy." The third call was to someone Isabella hadn't spoken to in 3 years, her brother Diego, a cybersecurity expert who worked for a private firm that specialized in corporate investigations. Diego had never liked Alexander, had always said there was something cold about him that reminded him of the old money families who had discriminated against their immigrant parents. "Isa, do you know what time it is? I need a favor. Diego, a big one. And I need you to not ask questions until I can explain everything in person." Her brother's voice immediately became serious. "What do you need access to Alexander's personal files, email, text messages, financial records, everything? Can you do it?" "Isa, what you're asking, if I get caught, if you don't help me, my son is going to grow up thinking it's normal for men to treat women like disposal objects. Please, Diego, I've never asked you for anything." 20 minutes later, Diego was at her door with a laptop and equipment that Isabella pretended not to recognize as highly illegal surveillance gear. By dawn, Isabella had more than just the video from the jet. She had 6 months of text messages between Alexander and Vivian, email exchanges about their future plans, and financial records showing that Alexander had moved over $200 million to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Luxembourg. He had been preparing for their divorce long before she discovered the affair. But perhaps most damning of all, Diego had uncovered communications between Vivian and a contact in Shanghai, a business rival of Sterling Enterprises who had been paying her for insider information about company strategies and pending deals. Alexander's affair wasn't just a betrayal of his marriage. It was corporate espionage that could land them both in federal prison at 6 a.m. sharp. Isabella sat across from Elena Vasquez in the attorney's corner office overlooking Manhattan. Elena was exactly what Isabella had expected: sharp, elegant, and radiating the kind of controlled power that came from destroying powerful men's carefully constructed lies. "This is extraordinary," Elena said after reviewing the evidence. "In 20 years of practice, I've never seen a case where the defendant documented his own infidelity and criminal activity so thoroughly." "What can we get?" Isabella asked, her hands folded carefully over her belly. "With this evidence, everything. The prenuptial agreement becomes void due to fraud. He materially misrepresented his intentions and assets when you signed it. The affair documentation gives us grounds for significant punitive damages. The offshore accounts constitute asset concealment and fraud. And this insider trading scheme?" Elena smiled, and Isabella understood why she had never lost a case. "Ms. Rodriguez Sterling, we're not just going to win. We're going to make legal history." "I want more than money," Isabella said quietly. "I want him to understand what it feels like to lose everything, to be humiliated, to realize that the people he thought he could manipulate are actually smarter than he is." Elena leaned back in her chair. "Tell me what you have in mind." Isabella outlined her plan. It was audacious, unprecedented, and would either make her the most celebrated victim of infidelity in modern history or destroy what remained of her reputation forever. "You want to announce your divorce on live television," Elena clarified, "during primetime morning TV. I want the world to see what Alexander Sterling really is. I want every business partner, every board member, every investor to know that the man they trust with billions of dollars betrays the people closest to him without a second thought." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "It's risky. If this backfires, it won't backfire, because we're not just going to tell them, we're going to show them." That afternoon, while Alexander was in his office conducting what he believed was routine business, Isabella was across town at Chen Media Group's headquarters, working with Marcus and his production team to plan what would become known as the most shocking live television moment of the decade. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Marcus asked as they sat in his corner office, reviewing the timeline for the broadcast. "Once this airs, there's no going back. Alexander will fight dirty." Isabella thought about the conversation she had overheard on the jet, about Alexander's casual dismissal of their child as just an heir to be managed, about his cold calculation in planning to discard her once she had served her biological purpose. "Let him fight," she said. "I've got better weapons." That evening, Alexander came home with flowers, a gesture that once would have touched Isabella's heart, but now seemed like a mockery. He was in an unusually good mood, probably because he thought his plan was proceeding perfectly. "How are you feeling, darling?" he asked, kissing her cheek as she sat reading in the living room. "You seemed tired yesterday." "Just pregnancy stuff," Isabella replied, not looking up from her book. "The baby's been very active today." Alexander placed his hand on her belly, and Isabella had to fight not to recoil from his touch. "He's going to be strong," Alexander said. "A fighter, like his father." "Yes," Isabella agreed, thinking of the storm she was about to unleash. "I think he's definitely going to be a fighter." "I have some good news," Alexander continued, settling into the chair across from her. "The Monaco deal went through. Sterling Enterprises just acquired 3 more properties in Europe. This could be the expansion that takes us truly global." Isabella smiled. "That's wonderful, darling. I'm so proud of you." For Alexander noticed that her smile didn't reach her eyes. He didn't mention it. He was too busy basking in his own success, too confident in his ability to manipulate everyone around him, to notice that his wife was studying him like a chess player contemplating checkmate. "There's something else," Alexander said, and for a moment Isabella's heart stopped. Had he somehow discovered what she had learned? "I think we should go public with the pregnancy announcement. Do some interviews. Maybe a photo spread in Vanity Fair. Show the world what a perfect family we're going to be. The irony was almost too much to bear. I think that's a wonderful idea, Isabella said. In fact, I've already arranged for us to make an announcement. Tomorrow morning on Morning Manhattan, 8 a.m. Alexander looked surprised but pleased. Really, you arranged that without telling me? I wanted it to be a surprise. I thought, I thought it would be nice for us to share our good news with the world together. Alexander beamed, clearly imagining the positive press coverage, the way this would enhance his public image as a devoted family man. That's perfect. Isabella. Absolutely perfect. If only he knew just how perfect it was going to be. That night, as Alexander slept beside her, Isabella lay awake staring at the ceiling. In less than 12 hours, she would walk onto live television and detonate a bomb that would reshape not just her life, but the entire landscape of how powerful men thought they could treat the women in their lives. Her phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Everything's in place. Legal papers will be filed the moment you go on air. Are you ready? Isabella typed back. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The last text came from Marcus. Production team is standing by. The world is about to meet the real Isabella Sterling. Suboshwarnadamom. As dawn approached, Isabella rose quietly and prepared for war. She chose her outfit carefully, a black Armani suit that emphasized her strength while still showing her pregnancy. Paired with the pearl necklace Alexander had given her for their first anniversary, she wanted to look like exactly what she was, a woman who had been underestimated for far too long. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Gone was the soft, accommodating wife. In her place stood someone harder, more focused, more determined than she had ever been in her life. Today, she whispered to her reflection, Alexander Sterling learns what happens when you betray a woman who has nothing left to lose. The revolution was about to begin. At 7:45 a.m. on what would later be called Black Monday for Sterling Enterprises, Isabella sat in the green room at Chen Media Group's Manhattan studio, her hands folded calmly over her belly while makeup artists applied the finishing touches to her appearance. She looked radiant. Pregnancy had given her skin a healthy glow, and the black Armani suit projected exactly the image she wanted: powerful, composed, and utterly unafraid. Her phone had been buzzing with texts from Alexander for the past hour. Can't wait to see you on TV this morning. Darling, you're going to be wonderful. Just left the office. Traffic is terrible, but I'll be there in time. Break a leg, beautiful. Our son is lucky to have such an amazing mother. Each message felt like a dagger, but Isabella's expression remained serene. Alexander had no idea that by the time he arrived at the studio, his entire world would be in ruins. Sarah Williams, the host of Morning Manhattan, entered the green room with her signature warm smile. At 55, Sarah was a veteran of morning television who had interviewed everyone from presidents to pop stars, but she looked unusually tense this morning. Isabella, are you absolutely certain about this? Sarah asked, settling into the chair beside her. Once we're live, there's no taking any of this back. The video you've shared with our legal team, it's going to destroy everything. Isabella met Sarah's concerned gaze with steady eyes. Sarah, 6 months ago, I gave up my legal career to support my husband's ambitions. I believed in our marriage, our future, our family. Last week, I discovered that he's been planning to divorce me since the day I got pregnant, that he sees our son as nothing more than an heir to manipulate, and that he's been stealing money from his own company to fund a new life with his mistress. She paused, her hand moving protectively to her belly. My son deserves to grow up in a world where powerful men can't simply discard the women who love them when they become inconvenient. If that means I have to be the woman who changes that world, then so be it. Sarah nodded slowly. Our legal team has verified everything: the video, the financial records, the communications between your husband and Miss Blackwood. This is going to be the biggest story of the year. Good, Isabella said simply. It should be. At exactly 8:00 a.m., Isabella walked onto the set of Morning Manhattan. The studio was packed with cameras, producers, and staff who had all signed extensive non-disclosure agreements. Even so, word had leaked that something unprecedented was about to happen, and the show's viewership had spiked to nearly 15 million people, triple the normal audience. Sarah welcomed her with professional warmth, and for the first few minutes, the interview proceeded normally. They discussed Isabella's pregnancy, her charity work with Sterling Foundation, and her husband's recent business successes. To viewers, it looked like a typical puff piece about Manhattan's power couples. Then Sarah shifted in her chair. Isabella, you mentioned wanting to share some important news about your family this morning. What would you like to tell our audience? Isabella took a breath, looked directly into the camera, and smiled with the confidence of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Sarah, I want to tell the truth about my marriage, about the man the world knows as Alexander Sterling, and about what really happens when powerful men think they're above consequences. Across Manhattan, in the Sterling Enterprises boardroom where Alexander was conducting an emergency meeting about a potential acquisition, someone's assistant burst through the doors. "Sir," the young man stammered, "you need to see this. Your wife is on television, and she's—" Alexander looked up irritably from the conference table, surrounded by board members and potential investors. "She's what talking about the pregnancy I already know about. Sir, she's talking about Vivian Blackwood." The room went silent. Alexander's face drained of color as someone turned on the wall-mounted television just in time to hear Isabella's voice, clear and unwavering. "10 days ago, I discovered my husband in bed with his mistress, Vivian Blackwood, on our private jet. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was listening to them plan my disposal once I gave birth to his heir." 15 million people watched as Isabella's composed facade cracked slightly, revealing the genuine pain beneath. "I recorded their conversation because I knew no one would believe that Alexander Sterling, pillar of the community, devoted husband, could be so calculatingly cruel." Sarah leaned forward. "You have evidence of this conversation?" "I have 23 minutes of video evidence," Isabella replied, her voice growing stronger. "Video of my husband and his mistress not just betraying our marriage, but planning how to steal from Sterling Enterprises shareholders, how to hide assets from our divorce, and how to minimize his relationship with our unborn son to holidays and special occasions." In the Sterling boardroom, chaos erupted. Board members were shouting questions. Investors were frantically making phone calls, and Alexander stood frozen, watching his carefully constructed world crumble in real time. "That's impossible," he whispered. "She was never on the plane. She couldn't have." But even as he said it, Alexander's mind was racing back to that day, to the moment he thought he heard a noise near the bedroom, to James's odd comment about Isabella arriving early and then leaving suddenly. How had he been so careless? On television, Sarah was asking the question that Isabella had been waiting for. "What do you plan to do with this evidence?" Isabella's smile was calm, almost serene. "I've already done it. Sarah, as we speak, divorce papers are being filed in Manhattan Family Court, along with criminal referrals to the FBI regarding the insider trading scheme that Vivian Blackwood has been running with Chinese competitors, using information she obtained through her relationship with my husband." The studio was dead silent, except for the cameras rolling. "But more importantly," Isabella continued, "I want every woman watching to understand something. We don't have to accept betrayal as the price of love. We don't have to smile and stay quiet when powerful men treat us like disposal objects. And we certainly don't have to let them get away with it." Alexander's phone was ringing nonstop. The Sterling Enterprises stock price was in free fall, down 30% in the first hour of trading. The FBI was already at the company's headquarters with search warrants. Vivian Blackwood had apparently fled the country on a red-eye flight to London, leaving behind only a note saying she couldn't deal with the stress. But Isabella wasn't finished. "I want to show our viewers exactly what Alexander Sterling said about our marriage, our son, and his plans for our future," she announced, "because the world needs to see who he really is." Sarah nodded to the production booth, and suddenly the studio's large screens were filled with video from the private jet. 15 million people watched Alexander Sterling, one of America's most prominent businessmen, plan the systematic destruction of his pregnant wife's life while making love to his mistress. The audio was crystal clear. "She's too trusting. She actually thinks I work late because I'm dedicated to the business. She has no idea I've been with you almost every evening for the past 4 months. I need an heir. The kid will have nannies, boarding schools. I'll see him on holidays and special occasions. She'll get her 50 million and be grateful for it. The rest will be ours." As the video played, cameras captured Isabella's face composed, dignified, but with tears silently streaming down her cheeks. She wasn't crying from weakness. She was crying from the relief of finally being free to tell the truth. When the video ended, Sarah's voice was gentle. "Isabella, that must have been incredibly painful to hear." "It was," Isabella admitted, "but it was also liberating because it showed me exactly who I married, and it gave me the evidence I needed to protect my son from growing up to think that's how men are supposed to treat women." Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Isabella looked at the screen, smiled, and answered it live on television. "Hello, Alexander." Alexander's voice, broadcast to 15 million viewers, was shaking with rage. "Isabella, what the hell do you think you're doing? Have you lost your mind?" "Not at all," Isabella replied calmly. "I've found it. I've found my voice, my strength, and my self-respect. All the things I lost when I married you. You're destroying everything, the company, our reputation, our son's future. Our son's future is exactly what I'm protecting," Isabella interrupted. "I'm making sure he grows up knowing that his mother was strong enough to stand up to a bully, even when that bully had all the power and money in the world. This isn't over, Isabella. I have the best lawyers in New York. I'll fight you on everything." Isabella's laugh was genuinely amused. "Alexander, darling, you seem to forget something important. I used to be one of those lawyers, and now I have Elena Vasquez representing me, along with evidence of your adultery, your fraud, and your criminal conspiracy with your mistress." She paused, letting that sink in. "The question isn't whether you can fight me. The question is whether you have anything left to fight with." The call went dead. Alexander had hung up, but the damage was done. 15 million people had just heard one of America's most powerful men reduced to threats and panic by his pregnant wife. Sarah turned back to Isabella with something approaching awe. "What happens now?" Isabella stood up from her chair, her hand on her belly, her head held high. Now I rebuild. I take back Sterling Enterprises from the man who was destroying it for his own selfish purposes. I raise my son to be better than his father, and I help other women find the courage to stand up when powerful men try to make them disappear." She looked directly into the camera, speaking to every woman watching who had ever felt powerless, discarded, or underestimated. To every woman out there who's been told she's too emotional, too difficult, too demanding for expecting basic respect, you're not. You're strong, you're valuable, and you deserve better than men who see you as obstacles to their happiness rather than partners in building something beautiful. As Isabella walked off the set, her phone was buzzing with calls from reporters, investors, women's rights organizations, and book publishers. The hashtag #WashOn Sterling scandal was trending #1 worldwide, and videos of her interview were being shared millions of times across social media. But the most important message came from Elena Vasquez. Preliminary injunction granted. Alexander's assets frozen pending investigation. Congratulations, Isabella. You just won the biggest victory in divorce court history. Isabella smiled, placed her hand on her belly, and whispered, "Did you hear that? Little one, Mama just taught the world that nobody gets to treat us like we don't matter." The revolution had begun, and Isabella Sterling was leading it. 6 months after what the media dubbed the Sterling bombshell, Isabella Rodriguez Sterling stood in the corner office that had once belonged to her ex-husband, looking out over Manhattan from the 42nd floor of Sterling Enterprises. The nameplate on her desk read Isabella Rodriguez, CEO. She had legally dropped the Sterling name as part of the divorce settlement, reclaiming her identity along with her power. The transformation had been remarkable. Under Isabella's leadership, Sterling Enterprises had not only recovered from the scandal, but had emerged stronger, more ethical, and more profitable than ever before. The company's stock price had rebounded to record highs after Isabella announced a complete restructuring focused on sustainable development, affordable housing, and ethical business practices. But the personal transformation was even more striking. Gone was the soft-spoken society wife who had deferred to her husband's wishes and opinions. In her place stood a woman who commanded respect not through inherited wealth or marriage, but through competence, integrity, and an unshakable sense of her own worth. A soft knock at her office door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," Isabella called. Turning from the window, Marcus Chen entered, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing the biggest smile she had seen in months. "I just got word from Forbes," he announced. "You made the cover. Woman of the Year, How Isabella Rodriguez Changed Corporate America." Isabella laughed, accepting the magazine he handed her. The cover photo showed her in a sharp business suit, holding her son Diego, named after her brother, who was now 6 months old, in the undisputed light of her life. The headline read, "From Victim to Victor, the Isabella Rodriguez Revolution." "I still can't believe how much has changed," Isabella said, settling into her chair as Marcus poured champagne into 2 glasses. "A year ago, I was planning charity galas and trying to be the perfect corporate wife. Now I'm running a Fortune 500 company and raising a son who will grow up knowing that his mother never backed down from a fight." Marcus raised his glass. "To the woman who proved that the best revenge is massive success." They clinked glasses, and Isabella took a small sip. She was still breastfeeding and being cautious about alcohol. Through the windows of her office, she could see the construction cranes working on Sterling Enterprises' newest project, a complex of affordable housing units in the Bronx that would provide homes for over 1,000 families. It was exactly the kind of project Alexander would have dismissed as not profitable enough. "How's the little man?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. Isabella's entire face lit up at the mention of her son. "He's perfect, growing so fast I can barely keep up. And Marcus, he's such a happy baby. Even with everything that happened during the pregnancy, even with all the stress and chaos, he's just joyful." The custody battle had been swift and decisive. With the evidence of Alexander's affairs, criminal activities, and his recorded statements about viewing their son as merely an heir to manage, Isabella had won full custody with Alexander, granted only supervised visitation rights 2 hours per week. He had exercised those rights exactly 3 times in 6 months before stopping altogether. "Any word from the ex?" Marcus asked carefully. He knew the subject was still painful for Isabella, not because she missed Alexander, but because she grieved for the man she had thought she married, the man who had never really existed. "His lawyers called last week," Isabella replied, her tone neutral. "Apparently he's living in a penthouse in Miami now, trying to start some kind of cryptocurrency venture. The SEC investigation cost him about $3 billion in fines and frozen assets. Plus he had to pay me the largest divorce settlement in New York history." The final settlement had awarded Isabella 70% of the marital assets, approximately $4.5 billion, plus the company, their homes, and $200 million in punitive damages for emotional distress. Alexander had been left with roughly $2 billion, still wealthy by any standard, but a shadow of his former empire. "And Vivian," Isabella's smile was sharp, "extradited from London last month to face federal charges for insider trading and corporate espionage. Turns out when you sell corporate secrets to foreign competitors, the FBI takes it very personally. She's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison." The justice of it all still amazed Isabella. The woman who had helped destroy her marriage and tried to steal her husband was now facing the consequences of her own greed and betrayal. A soft chime from Isabella's computer indicated an incoming video call. She smiled when she saw the caller ID Diego Rodriguez, MIT. Excuse me for a moment, Isabella told Marcus, then answered the call. Her brother's face appeared on the screen, beaming with pride. Hey, big sister, I just saw the Forbes cover online. Mom's going to frame like 10 copies. Isabella laughed. Their mother had become something of a local celebrity in their old neighborhood, proudly telling everyone about her daughter who had shown those rich men they can't push around Rodriguez women. How's the doctoral program going? Isabella asked. Great, but that's not why I'm calling. I wanted to give you a heads up. I just got a very interesting job offer. The FBI wants me to head up their new cybercrime division. Apparently, my work on your case caught their attention. Isabella raised an eyebrow. You mean the highly illegal hacking you did to get evidence against Alexander? Diego grinned sheepishly. They prefer to call it innovative digital investigation techniques. Apparently, when you use those techniques to bring down corporate criminals, they're willing to overlook certain procedural irregularities. After ending the call with her brother, Isabella turned back to Marcus, who was reviewing something on his tablet. What's that? She asked. Your interview request for this week? 60 Minutes wants to do a follow-up piece. Harvard Business School wants you to deliver their commencement address, and, he paused, looking slightly uncomfortable. Alexander's lawyer called. He wants to arrange a meeting. Isabella's expression hardened. Absolutely not. We have nothing to discuss. Actually, Marcus said carefully, it might not be what you think. Word is he wants to apologize. Genuinely apologize. His new venture is failing. He's been blacklisted by most of the business community, and apparently he's been in therapy. Too little, too late, Isabella said firmly. I've moved on. More importantly, Diego has moved on. We don't need Alexander's apologies or his guilt-driven gestures. As if summoned by the mention of his name, baby Diego's cry echoed through the office intercom. Isabella had arranged for a private nursery adjacent to her office, so she could continue breastfeeding while running the company. It was exactly the kind of progressive workplace policy that Alexander would have dismissed as coddling. Duty calls, Isabella said, standing and smoothing her skirt. Will you wait here? I want to discuss the Stanford expansion project with you. In the nursery, Isabella found Diego sitting up in his crib, arms outstretched toward her. At 6 months old, he was already showing signs of the intelligence and determination that seemed to run in the Rodriguez family. His dark hair was exactly like hers, but his eyes were Alexander's green, a reminder that even from terrible situations, beautiful things could emerge. Hello, my love, Isabella murmured, lifting him into her arms. Did you have a good nap? Diego babbled happily, reaching for the pearls around her neck, the same pearls Alexander had given her for their first anniversary, which she now wore as a reminder of her own strength rather than her former marriage. As she settled into the comfortable chair in the nursery, Isabella reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. A year ago, she had been dependent on Alexander for everything: money, social status, even her sense of self-worth. Now she was one of the most powerful women in American business, a single mother raising her son with the help of a team she trusted completely, and most importantly, she was genuinely happy. Her phone buzzed with a text from Elena Vasquez. Just wanted you to know 3 more women have contacted our firm this week. Inspired by your story to leave abusive marriages, you're changing lives, Isabella. That, more than the Forbes cover or the business success, made Isabella smile. She had never intended to become a symbol of women's empowerment, but if her public battle with Alexander inspired other women to demand better treatment, then the pain had been worth it. After feeding Diego and settling him back in his crib for another nap, Isabella returned to her office where Marcus was still waiting, now joined by her assistant with a stack of messages. More interview requests, her assistant explained. Also, there's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's about a personal matter. Her name is Jennifer Morrison, and she seems upset. Isabella frowned. The name wasn't familiar, but something about it nagged at her. Send her in. A few minutes later, a woman in her early 30s entered the office. She was well-dressed but clearly distressed, with the kind of nervous energy that Isabella recognized from her own darkest days during the marriage. "Ms. Rodriguez," the woman began hesitantly, "I'm sorry to bother you without an appointment, but I need help. My husband he's like your ex-husband was, powerful, controlling, and I just found out he's been cheating with his secretary for 2 years." Isabella gestured for the woman to sit, her expression immediately softening. "Tell me everything." As Jennifer Morrison told her story, a tale eerily similar to Isabella's own experience with betrayal, manipulation, and a husband who saw his wife as a possession rather than a person, Isabella made a decision that would shape the next chapter of her life. "Jennifer," Isabella said when the woman finished speaking, "you're not alone, and you're not powerless. I want to help you, and I want to help other women in similar situations." She turned to Marcus. "Remember how we talked about expanding Sterling Enterprises into new areas? I think I know what our next venture should be." 6 months later, the Sterling Foundation for Women opened its doors in a gleaming new building in Manhattan. The foundation provided legal services, financial support, and counseling for women leaving abusive or manipulative relationships. It was funded entirely by Isabella's divorce settlement and operated by a team of the best lawyers, therapists, and advocates in the country. On the day of the foundation's grand opening, Isabella stood at the podium addressing a crowd of supporters, media, and women who had been helped by the foundation's early work. Baby Diego sat in a front row seat, held by Isabella's mother, who had flown in from California for the occasion. "When my marriage ended," Isabella told the audience, "I thought my life was ending too. I thought I had lost everything that mattered. What I discovered instead was that I had finally found myself. I had found my voice, my strength, and my purpose." She paused, looking out at the faces of women who had traveled from across the country to be there. "Today, we're not just opening a foundation. We're opening doors for women who have been told they don't matter, that they should be grateful for scraps of respect, that they should stay quiet and accept less than they deserve. We're here to tell them and the world that those days are over." The applause was thunderous. But what moved Isabella most were the tears she saw in the eyes of women who understood exactly what she had gone through and how far she had come. As the crowd dispersed and the reception continued, Isabella stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. Marcus joined her on the building's rooftop terrace, where they could see the lights of Manhattan stretching out before them. "Any regrets?" he asked gently. Isabella thought about the question seriously. Did she regret marrying Alexander? Did she regret the pain and betrayal she had endured? Did she regret the public spectacle of her divorce? "No," she said finally. "Every terrible thing that happened led me to where I am now, led me to Diego, to this work, to the woman I've become. I wouldn't change any of it." Her phone buzzed with one final message of the day, from an unknown number. "Miss Rodriguez, my name is Sarah Chen, no relation to Marcus. I saw your interview today and wanted to thank you. I left my abusive husband last month because of your story. I'm scared and broke, but I'm free. Thank you for showing me that it was possible." Isabella smiled, typed back a quick response offering help and support, then tucked her phone away. Tomorrow there would be more women to help, more businesses to run, more barriers to break down. But tonight, she was content to stand on her own rooftop, master of her own destiny, mother to a beautiful son, and leader of a movement that was changing the world one woman at a time. The girl who had walked onto that private jet 6 months pregnant and heartbroken was gone forever. In her place stood Isabella Rodriguez, CEO, philanthropist, mother, and living proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to stay down when powerful people try to destroy you. As she looked out over the city lights, Isabella whispered a promise to her sleeping son and to all the women she would help in the years to come. "Nobody gets to make us disappear, not ever again." The revolution was complete, and Isabella Rodriguez was just getting started.